Good afternoon, my name is Natalia, and it's my pleasure to see every one of you join us here in Ukraine Media Center Ukrinform. And traditionally, I want to thank the representatives of all the mass media who tell the world the truth about this war and our heroic resistance. Today is day 471 of the full-scale invasion of our homeland by Russian aggressor. In brief, our schedule for today is as follows. At 13 o'clock, we will be talking about the consequences of detonation of Kakhovka HPP for agro-industrial sector of the south of Ukraine. And at 14 o'clock, we will be talking about Zaporizhia nuclear power plant and current situation over there after the detonation of Kakhovka hydraulic power plant. Joining us right now is Natalia Humeniuk, head of the United Coordinated Press Center of Security and Defense Force South. Good afternoon, Miss Natalia. Good afternoon. Glory to Ukraine. Glory to the heroes. Miss Natalia, let's start with the current situation in the south of our country. What is it like? We see, or from what we see, the shells by the occupiers are intensifying. What can you comment about the situation for the time being? We may say that the occupiers did not stop their shells. They have become less numerous due to the objective reasons, because they had to withdraw a little bit under the being pressed by the flooding. They had to go a little bit into the depth of the region, from 5 to 15 kilometers in the depth in some sectors, which allowed the enemy to lose some of the mortar units that were inflicting powerful strikes over the region, including Kherson, and in general but in general they did not stop or decrease the intensity of the shells. We were saying that we would need about 30 kilometers distance from the left bank to terminate the shellings, but the flooding allowed to increase this distance, which resulted in decrease of the intensity of the shellings. We use down to 30 or 50 from 60 70 that we used to have on a daily basis. And what's most horrifying is that the places of humanitarian evacuation are being shelled, where people are being helped to evacuate from the flooded areas. The enemy continues inflict strikes in the hubs where people are being gathered for further relocation, as it happened, for example, yesterday during the day work of the evacuation teams. The enemy inflicted strike on an educational institution, on the school actually, where people were gathered for further evacuation. About 20 people were injured as a result of the strike, and on top of that, during the night, the enemy, on the background of their missile attack, which covered almost all of the Ukraine, after the air raid alert, the enemy was also using tactical aviation along the forward edge of the battle area, and the areas adjacent to the forward edge of the battle area in Berislav district were attacked by 4 FAB bombs. And again, people were affected who relocated from flooding to safer areas. However, they were still targeted by those strikes of the enemy, which resulted in about destruction of about 20 residential buildings. Also, the shellings are incessant in a Kyiv district. The enemy shelled it twice yesterday, Kotsurubska community, and they keep all the communities under pressure and terrorize the maritime waterways. And given the fact that the current of water, the stream carries a lot of big things, including the mine defense, which was equipped by the enemy in the left bank. The mines turned into floating, and the stream carries them all the way to Odessa. Yesterday, one of such mines was defused by the Secretary of Defense Forces in a manner of controlled detonation in one of the beaches of Odessa. Yeah, we've seen those videos with the mines near the shores of Odessa. So what will be your advice for the people? What else should we expect? Where such hazard may arise? Where can it spread? The advice of the military command is the same. We were warning that the seashore is a line of defense and insecurity during the martial law. Now this danger is only intensifying. The condition of the water itself, which is filled with these uh, consequences, so to say, of this catastrophic event, and those mines that are carried by the stream, I imagine they may for example collide with the anchored sea mines with which the areas close to the seashore is filled, and that shrapnel, even those parts of the buildings that were carried by the stream today to the shore of Odessa, they are also a hazard, and we have to realize that such things, even of a very utility nature, like some barrels of unknown origin, may be thrown into the stream for some reason, and they may contain some explosive devices inside. Can we say that the water level is subsiding? Have we made it rescuing all of those who were in the areas of flooding, or there were cases when people were refusing to evacuate? In some areas, people even continue to refuse evacuation right now. They want to wait until the water subsides in the roofs of their buildings or in some other higher grounds. They want to wait for the water to subside in a natural way, but it may last for long, really. Miss Natalia, unfortunately, we've lost communication with you. We're not hearing you right now. One, two. I apologize. Yeah, I think we've reestablished the connection. Yeah, everything's back on. Yeah, everything seems to be back on apart from the picture, which is a little bit rotated now. Yeah, I can see it now. Yeah, so we can go back to our dialogue. So, however, sometimes the people are being convinced by rescuers, by the policemen, and we try to assist them to the maximum extent in their evacuation. For the time being, it's around 3,000 persons who were evacuated. However, we have to state that unfortunately there are casualties of this catastrophe. And what's peculiar, it's not Kherson but Mykolaiv region. The water level went up in Bukh and Ingulets rivers in Mykolaiv region. Can you hear me now? This is why we continue our work with the citizens in terms of explanation the necessity of evacuation, specifically in those districts which were indirectly affected by the flooding. Miss Natalia, do we know anything about those people who stay in the temporarily occupied territories of Kherson region? Do we know whether any evacuation, any rescue measures are being taken there, or the occupiers don't do anything at all? Well, the process of evacuation is very complicated. The president addressed international organizations who have to get involved in influencing the occupational troops to arrange the prompt evacuation of those people who ended up in the water traps. But we've all seen that case of rescuing of the family from Oleshki who received aid from the defense forces of Ukraine, even through the gray zone. No matter how dangerous and difficult it was, and we obviously cannot disclose the details of this operation because a lot of people still remain there under the shellings, under the threat of shellings and strikes. And if we will be able to organize such operations, obviously we will. Miss Natalia, I cannot help but asking you about that powerful work of the armed forces of Ukraine that is being exercised in the occupied territories. We see how precisely our armed forces target the spots of concentration of the enemy forces in Berdansk and Melitopol. Can you give us a little bit more detail about this work? What were we able to target? I mean, we have to realize that this work is just as remote and perspective as the distances is being executed on. This is why the security component requires certain silence at current phase. When it's relevant, we will disclose all the details to you. We're not going to conceal anything. We only have to hide the plans of this work, and that's the only thing we're hiding so far. Thank you very much, dear colleagues. If you have any questions on the floor, please proceed. Good afternoon, Alina Strashko, Ukrinform. Miss Natalia, my question is as follows. How many rescuers are currently engaged in mitigation of the flooding consequences? What is the number of material, vehicles, policemen, and military? Once again, I want to draw your attention to the fact that the rescue operation is going on, in fact, in the forward edge of the battle area, and we cannot report the number of the people engaged in this operation. Reporting the number of vehicles is absolutely impossible for the time being as well. We don't want again to conceal it. We're just asking for your understanding, and we can report that the forces are absolutely sufficient, and this is why even the humanitarian aid incoming to Kherson was stopped, because the consequences of the catastrophe will be mitigated for a few days to come, and all the aid that people are ready to provide to mitigate this catastrophe, it was also limited, because it's been all the necessary resources are available among the reserves of our security and defense forces. All the proposals are currently considered by the headquarters and will be redistributed according to the necessities. So, for what I understand, you're urging the volunteers to suspend their entrance to Kherson. Is it so? Yes, first of all, we have all the necessary resources, and on top of this, the evacuation work under the powerful threat of shellings, it has its rules. And in order not to create excessive concentration of people, not to overload the medical institutions and other defense and security facilities, there is a necessity to dose the incoming aid. The aid will be necessary within the days to come, when the available resource which is engaged now will be exhausted. So it would be relevant to contact the regional military administration to report on your aid capacities, and you will be engaged as soon as it's relevant. Ms. Natalia, thank you very much for this broadcast. Thank you for the information you have disclosed. I'm reminding you, dear colleagues, joining us online was Natalia Humeniuk, the head of the Joint Coordinated Press Center of Security and Defense Force South, and our next briefing will be at 13 o'clock, and we will be talking about the consequences of the detonation of Kakhovka HPP for agricultural sector of Ukraine. So stay tuned, continue working for our victory, and glory to Ukraine.